A few years ago, my anxiety was high. I was already at a point in my life where I thought I was a little out of it. But that was amplified by a lot when I kept repeatedly hearing noises outside my window, like every single night. It just wouldn't stop. I would finally get so freaked out that I'd go and wake up my parents and get them to look outside, but they never found anything. I started to think I was crazy, or just subconsciously seeking attention. One morning, my grandfather discovered one of our lawn chairs beneath the bedroom window. It's pretty high up, and the bottom pane is fogged, so I'm not sure the chair even helped, but it was left there regardless. And the next night, hearing sounds again, nothing. The night after, however, we checked outside and discovered something that made my stomach churn. A small step ladder was sitting directly outside of my window, back just enough to allow somebody to sit on it but still see. On my windowsill was a bag of now cold McDonald's food, which is just up the street from me. Most of the food was still in there, but still, some fucker had been watching me doing absolutely nothing of interest in my room, without me knowing for I don't know how long. The cops were called, but nothing happened. I felt crazier than ever. No one was to be found, but at least we had some evidence that somebody, someone that shouldn't be hovering around our house, was at my window, watching intently through the blinds in a space between the two curtains. I heard noises the next night, ran outside, nothing. Earlier the night, I had sewn my curtains together, which hopefully made it harder to see in. Apparently it did, but now the fucker had taken to climbing on top of our air conditioning unit, and from there climbing into our Herbie garbage can, then standing on that so that he could see above where the drapes went. The handprints and shoe prints were left on the lid to prove it. And I should mention that there were now holes in my screen, and I had heard these holes being created. He took a stick and sharpened it somehow. We found it outside my window and was trying to stealthily break away the screen bit by bit. The hole is still there. The next night, I distinctly hear the gravel near my window crunch. There was simply no mistaking the sound. So, as stealthily as I could, I let out a small moan. He surely heard and rolled just out of view, as if I were sleeping. Then pressed myself against a wall out of view of the window, very quietly opened my door and crept down the hall. My heart was pounding. Normally I knock on my parents' door, but I knew the slightest sound would make this bastard bolt, so I quietly opened their door and sneaked in, and then informed them that there was, without a single doubt, somebody outside my window. They didn't mind the intrusion and got up, dressed, formulated a plan, and crept to the back door. I ran to the bathroom to stand on the edge of our tub and peek out of the window just as the back door was thrown open, and my parents ran outside like morons. And sure enough, they saw him. They started screaming as the man leapt off the Herbie and bolted down our driveway. They screamed all sorts of horrible things at the top of their lungs. He ended up scraping across the street, hiding behind the house adjacent to us. Honestly, the balls on this guy. He kept peeking out at us as we all stood outside, but we wanted to leave him there so the cops could finally nab him. They were called, they came, and they searched, but they never found him. The bastard must have hopped a fence. Still to this day I hear sounds outside my window, even in the dead of winter, but he's never out there. He may have just been a peeper, but he targeted me specifically, and for months, until he was almost caught. And what really pisses me off is that once he lost interest in me because it was too unsafe, he moved on to a house down the street with 2 little girls. He actually managed to get in through their window, and their dad caught him just standing there in the middle of the room, watching them sleep, jacking it, I think. I still don't think he was caught even then. All I know now is that it could have been way worse, but it messed me up. I trust the men in my neighbourhood even less now. The men around here stare very blatantly. I've even been chased home by one. I've had a guy try to jerk me into his car when I was passing, telling him no, that I didn't need a ride and to leave me alone. All these years later, I still hear stuff outside my window and freak out. It's fucked up. I turn out my lights entirely to exercise. I do my best to avoid windows when I undress. It's really just scarred me, even though it wasn't a huge deal. There is this guy that I met at the same time I met my current boyfriend. I even met him in the same place. He was around 10 years older and totally not my type. I only talked to him when absolutely necessary, altogether maybe 2 hours of completely impersonal and polite conversation. Well, my boyfriend and I start dating and the other guy blows it, follows us to a club. I notice, freak, run to the bathroom with my girlfriend. My boyfriend talks to him, and the guy starts acting like a 5-year-old, even cries. So we leave. About a month later, I find a creepy love letter in my mail, and he had delivered it himself. Fast forward 1 year, I no longer frequent the place I met him, because basically he lives there. And neither did my boyfriend, apart from a few awkward and unavoidable run-ins in the city. Nothing. Until exactly a year after I started dating my boyfriend, I get a card in the mail, delivered himself, asking me out as if nothing had happened and as though we were dating. It was a whole year of no contact, so I didn't react. We moved, and the summer we did, I started noticing that guy at the mall. First, I thought it was a coincidence, but then a shop owner I know tells me the guy is following me and keeps hiding when I turn around. What the fuck? I tell him the whole story, and he promises to inform other owners he knows and call mall security the next time he sees this creep. It's been well over 2 years. I don't want to work as a waitress, even though I desperately need the money, because I know he would find me and he would sit there all day and all night watching me. I don't want to work anywhere near the place I met him, which is basically anywhere near the city centre. I don't even go to the mall alone anymore. I don't go to certain supermarkets and cafes because I know he frequents them. I don't even know this guy's last name, and he controls where I go and where I am. Cautious, even where we move to. I wish I could leave the city, but I can't, and even if I did, he knows both my first and last name, and I only know his first name and what he looks like. He can easily find me, and it's never going to be easier once I finish university, since I aim for a university teaching position, and they display all your information on the internet. You have to for the students. He could come to open my classes or lectures. He could follow me again. I'm scared. This is about an ex-boyfriend, and the stalking started after the breakup, but generally the entire relationship was fucked. We'd been friends for a few years, and when we started dating in junior year of high school, after we started dating, he became a completely different person. He'd always grab my phone and look through my text messages and call logs. He wanted to be together all the time, no matter what, even if I was studying. I'd have random crazy girls calling me, telling me how they were going to beat me up, or they were going to fuck my man. He'd be insanely jealous and we'd fight. He'd get so mad he'd throw his phone across the room or across the street. The whole relationship was crazy, and I tried to end it at least 6 or 7 times over the 1.5 year span of it all, and every time we'd break up, he'd go batshit crazy on me and do the whole I'm going to kill myself bit. He'd call and call and call, and he'd want to talk and talk, until eventually I would say, if I agree to get back together with you, will you back off? Not healthy, I know, but I had shit to do, and I didn't have the time to deal with it. It was just easier to agree to get back together. One time I broke up with him. He told me he had been having headaches, so he went to the doctor. That day, they found out he had had a brain aneurysm and only had 8 months to live. We had 2 friends die in car accidents on the same day, exactly 1 year apart. So when I realised that 8 months from then would be the same month as our friends' deaths, I completely freaked out and we got back together, because I honestly believed we had some curse against our friends on that exact date. And wouldn't you know it, that those 8 months came and went without a single trip back to the doctor for his brain aneurysm. So here's where it gets crazy. My senior year, I had no idea how to get out of this relationship. So I started looking into out-of-state college, figuring there's no way he would follow me. If I could just put up with this crazy until that summer, I'd be off in a magical world of college and no crazy boyfriend. He must have seen the brochure from the college that I was interested in, because suddenly he wanted to go to that college. He even went as far as taking SATs. I knew my plan wasn't going to work. He'd follow me wherever I went. So what did I do? I joined the army. That'll show him. Try following me in there, I thought. Next thing I know, he's in a meeting with a fucking recruiter. Of course, the likelihood of it being stationed where I was very slim, but I didn't know that at that time. I was young and scared. I realised the army was a dumb idea and wrote a letter to the commander, commissioner, whoever is the head honcho of recruitments. I explained that I had lied on my physical and sent a copy of all my medical records. I was discharged shortly after that. I don't remember how it finally happened, but we finally broke up. I changed my phone number and I cut off connection with all of our shared friends. Yay, the end of the crazy, free at last, or so I thought. For the next few months after the breakup, he'd randomly show up where I was. The movie theatre, tennis courts, restaurants that we had never went to before. He'd always want to talk, but I always just say, I have to leave immediately. He'd get furious if he saw me with another guy, no matter who the guy was. It could have even been my cousin, and he would have flipped his shit. I still have no idea how he knew where I was going. And once I left for college, which is around 90 minutes away, I thought it would all be over. I heard he had come up to my college a few times to see other friends, but I would stay in my dorm those nights, afraid that I would see him if I went out. And during my freshman year of college, one of our close friends from that group killed himself. I came home to attend the funeral. My ex was pretty distraught, since this was the third friend of ours to die in 3 years. I had no choice but to be nice to him. I mean, it was a funeral for our good friend. After the funeral, everyone was going over to a friend's house just to spend some time together. I didn't want to go, but my friends convinced me. And while at the house, this ex starts talking to me. I act polite, but try to avoid him. It doesn't work. He's right next to me all night, trying to kiss me. He'd put his arm around me, whatever he could get. Someone this translates into him thinking we're back together. I'll tell him I'm leaving. He freaks out. And he gets my number somehow from someone at the party, and then he starts calling and texting and calling and texting all the goddamn time. This continued for 5 years. 5 years. And I moved out of state now, and I don't talk to anyone from back then anymore. And eventually, and finally, the phone call stopped. I still get weird whenever I go back to my hometown. I'm constantly surveying the area, scared that I'm going to see him again. And if I happen to be with my significant other, I won't even venture into any part of the city that I think that there's a chance he might be there.